This is Transqat, a safe space to stand. Transgender issues, queer people, respectful conversations. I'm host Clare McCarthy. Welcome to Transqat. Today I'm talking with Robin McHaelen, the executive director of True Colors, Inc. Now, True Colors is a landmark in Connecticut, working to ensure that queer kids are safe, valued, and able to be their authentic selves. Robin's also an adjunct professor at Central Connecticut State University. She's the co-author of Opening the Doors for All LGBTQ+ Students, and in her spare time, she runs McHaelen Consulting Services. We are joined in our conversation by Beatrice Whalen, a UCONN student interning with Robin on this year's triumphant return of SOGIECon. To register for SOGIECon, go to healthcollective.org, pull down the programs menu, and go to True Colors SOGIECon, and here's the button where you can register. Here's the schedule. A quick reminder before we begin, I'm producing a series of mini episodes about the slurry of executive orders being excreted by the federal government. Already in this feed are episodes focusing on 14187, Gender-Affirming Care for Youth, and 14168, establishing a federally recognized policy of two and only two genders. Next up is a look at the 3 executive orders focusing on DEI. Meantime, please enjoy today's conversation with Robin and Bea.
Welcome to Transqat, both of you. Why don't I start with having you introduce yourselves?
My name is Beatrice. I go by B too. I'm a MSW, Master of Social Work student at UCONN. I am doing, as part of my internship for school, I am working with Robin on organizing a queer youth conference.
And Claire, I'm Robin McHaelen. I tend to do this as my intro. It's become like my thing, so I'm going to go ahead and do it, even though I think you've heard it before. So I'm Robin McHaelen. I've been working with gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, intersex, queer, questioning, two-spirit, same-gender, loving, pansexual, flexual, not straight, not labeling, straight-ish, straight so far, straight with options, straight but stuff happens, gender-bending, bigender, pangender, agender, asexual, non-binary, and other sexual and gender minority youth for about 30 years. I love starting with the language, the litany of the language, because I do a lot of training for teachers and clinicians and social workers and stuff. And one of the points I want to make is that the language is changing, and that we really can't keep up, but we can always keep open. And so if we don't know, just ask, right? And
Right.
And so as long as we stay open, and when someone tells us who they are, we just believe them, that's half the battle in developing cultural humility and cultural responsiveness.
But that sort of language development accompanies any sort of new area of learning. If you think back to just like 25 years ago, when the notion of having a personal computer was new, and households were just kind of dipping their toes into, well, maybe we should do this, I don't know. There were all these terms that were so intimidating and almost as long as the list you just rattled off. But we learned what we needed to learn. We let go of the stuff we didn't need to learn, and it was no big thing. And our lives were better, for the most part, for opening ourselves up to that.
Yeah, exactly. Great point.
So I missed the number. How long have you been doing this?
Almost 30 years.
Wow.
I started this work in 1993, 92, when I first started getting my master's at UConn. And so the first conference was in 1994. That's 31 years ago, I think.
Yeah, because that's the year I was born.
Okay, shush.
I wasn't feeling old until just a couple of seconds ago.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot. Now I need to go take a nap. So the conference this year is called SOGIECon. And for those who are not in the gender expansive community or in educating around that, what's SOGI?
So SOGI is sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. And we chose one thing. I'm on a mission to change the acronym from LGBTQ plus to SOGI. And the reason I'm on that mission is because, number one, when you say plus, That's othering, right? It's leaving
Here are the
people out.
important ones. Here
Right.
are the ones that
And then there's other
burn a
people.
letter.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But every human has a SOGIE. So every human has a sexual orientation, whether it's asexual or bisexual or multisexual or whatever it happens to be. Every human has a sexual orientation. Every human has gender identity, and every human has gender expression. And every human has a pronouns. And so, at least in English, because that's not true in every language, recognizing that SOGIE is something that impacts every human to one extent or another. And there's some groups of people within the SOGIE identity that have more obstacles or are more marginalized than others, but everybody has a SOGIE, and it's a way of really kind of bringing together the humanity of all of our identities, that this is something that we all are.
Right, because when you have marginalized communities, the tendency is for those in the center to look out at those of us on the margin and say, they've got something we don't that makes them other, whether you're talking race or religion or gender identity. And so a term like SOGIE brings us all more close to the center, or at least a realization that we're all in the same circle here.
Right, exactly. And I also think that my experience of working, being a member of the community on the lesbian side of the community, and also working with so many young people over the years and being a member of this, sort of diverse community, I've also recognized that people within the SOGIE of non-cisgender, non-heterosexual SOGIE, that we bring a lot of freaking value to the society, that the world would be a much more boring place without us, and that we have a role in society. We play an important role in expanding horizons, in pushing the envelope and making more room for everybody.
And to that end, tying in with the fact that you just as an individual have been doing this 30 years or so, that is testament to the fact that SOGIE is not new. Maybe the term is,
right.
But this mistaken notion that somehow gender expression, gender identity is trendy, or that it's something that was invented by internet culture or a couple of celebrities, that's nonsense. We've been here forever. And you've been working at it for decades now. So,
and the other thing, in doing the research, I teach at Central, and one of the courses I teach is intergroup relations. And so doing research for that class, one of the things that I've really has been struck by is that prior to colonization, most indigenous societies all over the world had multiple genders, right? That they didn't require people to get into two neat little boxes and stay there. They recognized that humans are diverse and that there's an expansive way of being. And then as colonization came in, that they imposed the concept of two and only two genders, and they also imposed the concept of only heterosexuality. And there were huge sanctions that they imposed on the indigenous people for stepping outside of those. And so it's a Western colonization that created this notion that there's two and only two of anything.
And a colonization that crosses from the political, obviously, it's a country colonizing another, but also religious, because what you're describing is what Christianity has done.
Exactly. And Christianity was a huge part of that colonization process, ranging back to the Crusades. And what's really interesting about that is that on the African continents and the Asian continent, every continent had diverse genders. And, in native indigenous societies in the U.S., most of the tribal nations have a word in their language for people who are more than one gender, or people who are not typically male or typically female.
And then sometimes multiple.
Yeah, and sometimes multiple.
identities
Yeah,
that it embraces.
exactly.
The conference that you folks are putting on this year is a return of sorts. You used to run a group called True Colors.
Right.
And I want to get the conversation over to the conference, so B, you can jump in, but
Right.
let's establish some history. Tell us about True Colors.
True Colors started as a fieldwork project. It wasn't called True Colors at the time. I was just getting my master's at UConn. And the first year that I did my field work, it was with a group of folks, because I was a community organizer. And so it was a group of folks, and we did a needs analysis survey of the queer community in Greater Hartford. And we found literally like 100 groups supporting adults. So no matter how you could slice or dice a community, there was a group for it if you were a grown up, you know. So like you wanted to be naked in the woods, they had a group for that. You were gay and Jewish, there was a group for that. You wanted to rent antique cars, there was a group for that. And but there were only 2 groups in the whole state for youth. And I remembered that I had a really crappy adolescence. And so I proposed to the university that for my second year, I would put on a conference exposing or bringing to the forefront the needs of LGBT adolescents. And it was called at the time, and we spent a lot of time, the organizers, you know, it was an organizing project. So I was bringing groups of people together to do this. And we spent a lot of time trying to come up with the name. So we decided on children because they're more fundable than teens. Right.
Yes.
And then, you know, because we were going to be asking people for money. And so we said, okay, children. And then we must have spent 2 weeks going from the shadows, in the shadows, out of the shadows. Right? And so we finally came up with children from the shadows and into the light. So for 10 years, we were children from the shadows. And originally, we were only supposed to do it for 1 year. I was working for the phone company at the time, right? But the youth and I were really so transformed by the experience that we really decided to keep going. So for the first 10 years, we were children from the shadows. And then on the 10-year anniversary, youth took over the stage at the closing. And they said, we're not children, we're not in any shadows, and stop putting mayonnaise on the sandwiches.
All reasonable requests.
Right. And so that was when we became True Colors. You know, we had incorporated as True Colors, but the conference became True Colors in the 11th year. And then we ran until 2019. And then 2 weeks before the conference, we found out that we couldn't hold it because of COVID. And then I retired. And the New Haven Community Center took the conference over for 1 year. Then they had some stuff going on there. And then they ultimately decided that they didn't want to run a statewide conference. They wanted to run a regional conference just for youth. So that's what they're doing. And then with everything that was happening nationally, with the number of anti-LGBT, especially trans and non-binary proposed legislation and everything that was happening, I decided that we needed to bring the conference back. So a whole bunch of people stepped up to help with that. And we did a lot of investigating about how do we keep it going? Because I just turned 70, so I can't keep doing this forever, you know. And so we looked at a bunch of different places and then ultimately decided to go with the Health Collective. And so the conference is now a program of the Health Collective, and they've committed to supporting it and maintaining it into the future.
For those who aren't from the Connecticut area, the Health Collective is an organization out of Hartford.
Right.
Today's episode of Transqat is sponsored by Small State Provisions. Small State Provisions is more than a bakery. It's a welcoming space for everyone. Proudly LGBTQ owned, this community-focused bakery creates hand-shaped sourdough, flaky pastries, and fresh brewed coffee using organic, locally sourced ingredients. With locations in Avon and West Hartford, Small State Provisions offers not just great bread, but a safe, inclusive environment where connections are made and everyone feels at home. To learn more, visit smallstateprovisions.com or follow them at smallstate on Instagram.
Did you grow up in Connecticut? Did you ever attend True Colors as a student?
I was originally born in Michigan, and I moved when I was like 9. So I was in Connecticut for when I was True Colors age, but I went to a Catholic high school, so they did not send us to True Colors.
So this is going to be Beatrice's first experience with the conference. You've gone to all the organizing meetings and stuff. Do you want to say anything about what your experience of the organizing process has been?
But it's been really interesting to kind of like watch how it works. And Honestly, Robin, I think you're one of the best people that you could possibly watch to like learn how to do organizing.
My camera's making my shirt flash.
Yes, it's very entertaining.
Didn't mean to interrupt you, Beatrice, but I'm wearing queer gear as a small rebellion. So I'm wearing it every day wherever I go because we're here, we're queer, we're not going away. And I have a lot of privilege. You know, I'm white, I'm old, so people don't think about sex with relation to me anyway. And and you know, and I have resources. So, you know, if it's a way of using my privilege to just go like,
It's funny you say that because I was having a conversation last night about an event that's coming up at the state capitol. And I was, yeah, absolutely, I'm in. Tell me how I can help. And I was told, well, yeah, we're trying to get queer seniors into the room. I was, oh, for crying out, really?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I think I was invited to that one too. And the person who invited me said, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we're looking for queer seniors. Would you go? And I'm like, yeah, I get discounts now. so
Now I don't have queer gear on, but I am wearing this cap because I'm cold. I'm in the house and
yeah.
I'm cold.
We
Yeah.
keep the house at 63, so I'm like I'm clutching myself.
B, let me go back to you in the planning for this. What's involved? Actually, where are we in terms of registration? Are kids able to register for this yet?
Yeah, so registrations are open. We are just putting the finishing touches on the workshop schedules.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll be able to get those workshop schedules published.
There's over 200 workshops, so slotting them has been, you know, challenging. But Friday's all done, and Saturday it's a smaller day, so it would probably I hope to finish it today, send it to the presenters for their confirmation, and then begin to publish it on Monday. People are registering. One of our other volunteers, Jill, used to be a grant writer. And so she took on the project of raising money to cover scholarships for young people to be able to come. And so she was able to raise well over $20,000 for scholarships. And there's a lot of good in that. And there's some challenges because the money came from individual community foundations. So like the Greater Waterbury Community Foundation gave us a good chunk of money, but it only covers that part of the state, right?
Right.
And so we're doing outreach now to let the schools know that it will cover the transportation, it'll cover the cost of registration. So we got a bunch of different ones. The two places where we didn't get any money is Hartford and New Haven. And New Haven is the one that we're really working hard on right now because the public schools asked for $10,000 to support 4 busloads of students from 5 different high schools to come. And then 2 other high schools that are charter schools also submitted a request. So we've been able to raise an additional $5,000 through individual donors for that. So we're still trying to raise additional money to be able to get New Haven to the conference because it's really important that now more than ever, people of all ages need this space to be in. And so the registration is picking up, and we're going to, starting next week, we're going to start really doing some media around letting people know. We're also going to have to pay attention to security differently than we've had to in the past.
So it is schools that register, not individual.
Both.
Oh, both.
Because
Okay.
the conference is for youth and everybody that's responsible for their health and well-being. So there's a track that's specific to young people, middle schoolers, high schoolers, and college-age students. And then there's a track for educators, one for clinicians and social workers and healthcare providers. There's a specific track for family members. And then there's a general track that's sort of for everybody. And there's the things in the general track tend to be things that are broader, like queer Zumba is in the general track. So, you know, there's a bunch of different things in the general, and there's a lot of health and well-being, you know, sort of like self-care things in the general track. Mm-hmm.
It's been a very, very stressful time for queer people. And so that's
especially trans and non-binary folks. You know, the hotlines are just buried in calls. with people that are just so distressed. And the gender clinics are buried in calls because families are like, what's going to happen? My kid's on puberty blockers. What's going to happen? Are they going to, this saved their lives. What is going to happen now?
The unfortunate answer right now is we don't know.
Don't know.
The Transqat store is now open. We're starting small, a few stickers and a bookmark designed by Transqat executive producer the Lady Bethesda, but we'll be adding more items as we go. To shop now, go to transqat.com, find support on the main menu, and then select store. We've also moved the sponsorship opportunities to the store so that everything can be in one place. The donate option is available under the support tab as well. Thanks in advance for supporting the show.
We do have a lot of workshops on legal rights. So like people from GLAD will be doing some things, people from the UConn School of Law, and they wrote the descriptions rather broadly because they don't really know what it's going to be like in March.
Right.
But people will be able to get really current information about the status of stuff. A lot of the executive orders were orders for reports in 90 days. And so we won't be at the end of the 90 days by the time the conference is, but we should have a better sense of whether or not the chaos is going to continue. We don't know. We just don't know.
Because certainly, your ACLU, legal, they all have plans in place. Mm-hmm. It just, it plays out over a period.
Plays out over time, exactly.
Mm-hmm. B, what kind of workshops, what kind of offerings have been jumping off the board at you as you're helping to put all this together?
People really seem to be excited about a lot of the queer history workshops. That seems to be a really big one.
I heard rumors that you were bringing someone in to do a Kahoot-based queer history trivia panel. I want to say her last name was McCarthy.
I think that's happening, Claire. There's also Queer Jeopardy. And there's a whole drag component of the program, and that starts with the history of drag, because within the gay community there is a very powerful history that takes a couple of different tracks, and in some ways it's a racial history. The folks that are doing that are coming from sort of three different areas of the drag community. So there's one from the Imperial Sovereign Court system, which is one track. Then there's also the houses. Ziomari Labeja is from the House of Labeja. And then Mucha also is one of the people that's doing it. Mucha actually was involved in the houses in Connecticut back in the 90s. Oh, wow. And she was the mother of the House of Pleasure. And so she had a whole crew of children, and now 30 years later, they're still in touch. Now she has grandchildren and great-grandchildren from.
There again, a sense of connectedness through history that, drag has been, it is an art form. And that just as when you walk into an art museum, there's a context for that painting on the wall. And there's a difference between what you see, for example, at a drag queen bingo and the houses, that whole voguing thing that came out of the houses.
Madonna Stoll. These are the Saturday workshops right here.
Ooh. And look at them color coded. That makes me happy.
And we do that
Robin,
because we want to be able to see, at a glance, which areas are missing. So this is for middle and high school students. Two-Spirit 101 and 101, Indigenous Ideas of Gender and Sexuality. Full Beat, Drag Makeup Workshop. LGBT Voices in STEM, Creating Schools that Welcome All Genders. Navigating your future and healthcare experiences as a gender queer person. Create your own unicorn and exploration of identity. Getting by, understanding bisexuality, pansexuality, and other identities. Queer, spiritual, and religious. Panel discussion with queer faith leaders. Working for our good. QT, BIPOC, healing and justice through faith. Adulting 101. Hopeful futures for 18 to 25-year-olds. Free mom hugs. Our story is more than just a hug.
Free mom hugs have been on the show. They are remarkable.
And then, exploring the self in art, LGBT mental health and aging, talking about sex with LGBTQ youth. So you can see that there's just a wide variety. That's just session one.
Fantastic. It does sound as if whatever track is bringing you to this event,
there's going to be something for you to do.
When you set that up, are you basing that on things that the kids have asked for in previous incarnations of?
Yeah, we also did a survey back in, when was that? Be like maybe September, October.
Yeah, it was near the start of the school year.
So we sent out a survey to all the GSAs and said, what do you want to see? And there was some pretty clear responses. Drag was very clear for a lot of people. Bisexuality was another one that people specifically asked for, workshops around bisexuality. And
I mean, that's not incredibly surprising, considering bisexuality is growing so much, so quickly among youth.
And there's also a sense, what's also interesting about bisexuality is that bisexual youth, and I don't know if this is true of pansexual youth, but bisexual youth have higher rates of anxiety and depression than either straight or gay or lesbian youth. And part of that, from the Trevor study, part of what that reasoning is that bisexual kids tend to get pressure from both parts of the community. Right. And it's also, gray is hard. Like if you know that you're this or this, even if there's stuff to deal with, you know that you're that and you've got resources. But if you don't, if you can't quite figure it out, it feels like there's just a lot more pressure. And I think that's true, within the trans community, of people who are, clearly know that they are a woman who was assigned male at birth, or a man who was assigned female at birth, versus someone who's non-binary, because you don't have the same criteria. As a society, we're not all that great at nuances.
And even within the community, or maybe I should say the community, there's pressure to cohere. If you're bi, you're going to be feeling pressure from the contingent that identifies as lesbian, in terms of, well, why don't you just come over to our side of the aisle? Or vice versa, because marginalized groups need people. They need to, they need to come together.
And every group, marginalized or not, has its own internal hierarchies.
Oh yeah.
And
wait. You're saying high school kids have hierarchies? What?
Well, it's the beauty of intersectionality, right? There's always more and more layers to everything.
Yeah, exactly. I one time did a training for middle school teachers, and the icebreaker I used was, in one word, describe your middle school experience. And there were 33 teachers in the room. I never forgot this. 33 teachers in the room, and 30 of them gave some version of hell.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, those hierarchies are tough.
And it, as you say, it's everywhere. It's in corporate America, whatever, exactly. Even if you open your own business, let's say you open a landscaping business, there's a hierarchy within your community of who the town hires first and who they go to second. It's everywhere.
Beatrice, have we talked about what your role is going to be at the conference?
We actually, at supervision on Thursday, talked about how we need to figure out what we're going to be doing.
There's so many choices, so many things. But my goal with the interns is to give you a wide variety of experiences. So I don't want to have you stuck in one place doing one thing. And you also there's going to be workshops that you're probably going to want to go to. So we have to, make sure that there's space for that. But I also want to give you, something that's got some real chewiness to it, that's something that has a lot of responsibility.
It sounds like there are many moving pieces. Are you looking for folks to help the logistics of it all?
Absolutely. And usually we use about 200 volunteers. And so I think at this point, we're probably just about halfway there. But I also notice a lot of volunteers show up at the very end. But the volunteers do everything from, on Thursday, the day before the conference, they put together packages. And we usually have about 75 folks that meet at UCONN and put all the packages together for the next day. And then on Friday, we use volunteers from 7 a.m. until 5. And, and all during the day, there's a bunch of different things. We have some challenges this year that we've never had before, in that there are other conferences happening at the same time. And we don't want to use the same build, even though they're going to be in the same area that we're going to be. We don't want to use the same buildings because we don't want our kids to run into people who are not part of the community. We don't want them to have any experiences of people looking at them funny or, or giving them a hard time. So there's a lot of thinking about what are the right buildings to use, and the advantages of this building versus this is at UCONN in stores. Yeah.
Stores.
And,
Devil's advocate kind of question for you on that. Then one of the executive orders that we've seen has to do with bathroom usage, has to do with, I believe, intimate spaces was the way the executive order phrased it. Is that
what we're going to do? What we've done in the past, and what we're going to do again this year, with or without the university's permission, is all of the bathrooms are gender neutral, except for the ones on the second floor. So if people should use the bathroom in which they feel the most comfortable, and we put signs up that says, if you walk into a bathroom and you feel uncomfortable, good. Try that on for a minute. And so for you, it's for a minute. For other people, it's every time they have to pee. So, but we did, we do want, there's sometimes a person might be just too, whatever, right? So we have to make sure that everybody has some place to pee. So the bathrooms on the second floor are gendered. If people need that, they can access that.
Have you considered using that as a tagline for SOGIECon? So, SOGIECon 2026, everybody needs a place to pee.
That would be a great idea.
I'm just tossing ideas here.
Right. That would be a great idea. Although one year I do want to tell people, listen, if you're when it's a gender neutral bathroom, try to use the stalls, will you? Because people are wandering in, and some poor little girl wandered into one of the restrooms that had urinals and thought the guy was flashing her, when in fact he was just peeing. And so, we'll make a recommendation from the stage, to use the stalls so that everybody stays comfortable.
Speaking of staying comfortable during the day, I've got to imagine that there are kids who would be attending for whom this is the first exposure to a community and a history and all of that. And I can imagine it being a little overwhelming. There's a lot of overlap in the queer community with the neurodivergent community. Yeah. Is SOGIECon prepared for looking after the well-being and mental health of attendees?
So in one of the ways that we do that is that a special group of volunteers are called tender loving care counselors. The TLCs themselves are graduate students in helping professions. And then the TLC supervisors are licensed clinicians. Over the course of the whole conference, they're in every building. There are TLCs whose job it is to wander around and look for lost souls, right? Or people who look like they need somebody to talk to or whatever. And then if a situation needs escalating, they've got the clinicians that they can go to. And literally in 26 years of the conference, I think we escalated to the supervisors maybe 5 or 6 times, and then only twice did we have to escalate beyond that, to get outside support for a young person. And then we also have 2 workshops, one on each day, that is specifically for people who are queer and neurodivergent or disabled, so that people can go together and have a conversation with each other,
right,
in ways that they don't have to explain everything.
It's so important to see in an environment like that. I'm not alone.
Right, exactly.
I'm not alone in my queerness. I'm not alone in this aspect of my personality or that.
And there's also there's special conversations for people who are queer and Black or African American, Latina, Indigenous or Two-Spirit, Asian and Pacific Islander. And so we tried to create spaces where people could bring their whole selves, we're trying to create a very safe environment just in general for everybody. But it's also true that sometimes we just want to be with our own, where we don't have to explain everything. And there's also one for trans and non-binary youth. You don't want to have to go through the basics, even though each of our experiences are going to be different, even within those groups, there's certain basic things you're not going to have to explain to each other, and certain microaggressions you're not going to have to face or whatever, right?
I was a teacher for 33 years.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure listeners to this podcast are sick of hearing me say that, but it's true. And the last 15 of them were in the Connecticut school system. And so I've seen groups of kids in one form of a GSA or another come back from True Colors, as it was in those days, come back from this conference and, oh, Robin, everything was changed about them. Their faces were glowing. Their demeanor was proud. Something as simple as wearing your flag, a non-binary flag or an Aero Ace flag or a trans flag as a cape seemed life-changing to them. And it happened over a decade of me teaching, where I watched these kids look forward to it. And because I was still in the system when COVID hit, I saw it went beyond disappointment. It was anger that they couldn't have that. So this is a big thing in the lives of these kids. And I can't wait to be there to see them enjoying it.
Me too. I can't wait.
B, let me throw it over to you for logistics. Where, when, how I can register, what the deadlines are, all that kind of good stuff.
So I don't know exactly about the deadlines, but healthcollective.org is the site where you can navigate to the SOGIECon program. And then registrations are available there, as well as volunteer signups.
The registrations are, so on the Health Collective, you're right, Beatrice, on the Health Collective, under the programs, there's a thing that's called True Colors SOGIECon, and everything is there. All of the registration information is there. The volunteer stuff is there. The vendor stuff is there, so that people can get access to the information. And as soon as we get the workshops all slotted, that information will be there as well. I'm hoping to actually launch the conference app next week, hopefully, and that people will then be able to start planning for which workshops they want to go to and things like that. The deadline, the final deadline is really March 7th, although in my experience in doing this in the past, it's always got pushed past that. March 7th is when the university says, okay, how many? And so
is there a cap?
Not really. Jorgensen holds about 2,000 people, but we've had way more than that. And as long as the fire marshal doesn't show up, it works out well. And so there's not really, we don't expect to have those kind of numbers this first year back, but our goal is to have around 2,000 folks. So the early bird registration ends on February 28th, though. So the prices go up after February 28th. So really, February is the month that we're going to push the hardest to get people registered, so we have the information. And, the cost of the conference for youth and actually youth and chaperones and family members, we work to keep it really low. And so youth are $25 for one day, $40 for both. And that also includes lunch both days. And chaperones are $40 and $55. And so the cost to us is around $60 a person. So that's why we have scholarships. That's why we look for co-sponsors and other ways of supporting the conference, so that we don't have to charge people the kinds of rates that we would need to if we didn't have other sources of income. So if anybody wants to make a donation, that's also really, really helpful. And you can specify that you want your donation to go to scholarships, and it will.
I happened to notice during the inauguration that behind the incoming president, there were a lot of really wealthy people. We might consider reaching out to them. Dear Mr. Musk.
Yeah. See, he could take the pocket change.
Yeah.
Pay for the whole conference, and everybody could come for free. He reached into his back pocket and go like, "Here you go."
Yeah, go away.
Make up to your child.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, because
exactly.
he's treating his child really terribly. Right. So everything you need is on the Health Collective's website. There'll be continuing more information. Once we launch the app will give people a lot more input, and they'll be able to interact with presenters and things like that. We've got the opening on Friday has Jade Estevan Estrada. And he's been on Netflix. He's a comedian, but he also does a lot of work on building bridges between communities. And then Shaniqua Broken Leg is from the Lakota tribe, and she's going to be welcoming in the four, recognizing that we're on Indigenous land and welcoming in the four directions. And David Correa, actually, I think he's on Saturday Close. He's a celebrity consultant for NBC. And then there's another person in the opening, Tawana Woolfolk, who is, she's a clinician, but she does a lot of stuff about queer joy. Because really, we want the conference, we want people to learn, we want people to connect, but we want people to really, to remember that queer joy is a thing and that we need it right now. And the Saturday opening is comedians. So Jade is coming back on Saturday morning, and also Samson McCormick, who's just the most lovely human in the universe. He's a Black gay comic who talks about growing up gay and Black in the church. And so I'm excited about. And then the Saturday Close is going to be the youth drag show.
Wonderful.
The youth who went through the drag program will be performing.
So they get to try out their new makeup.
And they have a piece where they're going to, learn their persona, like create their persona. There's a piece about building your clothes from scratch. I think that's going to be really fun. And David Correa is going to do on Friday at the Close, he's going to be doing a sort of a youth town hall so that youth can talk about their experiences of the day. And I told him up front, you have to tell them, do not let them give people their digits, and it's not where you get dates.
Right. We are not here to pick people up.
Right, exactly.
B, let me ask you first. Any last words? Anything you want to say that we didn't get to?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think that events like SOGIECon are even more important when we're in times like these. The way I see it is a lot of the backlash that's currently happening right now is a reaction to increased visibility of our communities. Mm-hmm. And I think that the only way that we can win against that is to keep being visible.
That's such a great point, Beatrice, because the number one form of prejudice reduction is face-to-face interactions over a period of time with a diverse group of people. It's hard to hate people that you know. And a lot of the people that are caught up in all the rhetoric are people who think they don't know anybody who's LGBT. So they're just using, what they're being told by being lied to by, the right-wing media.
Robin, last word to you. There are queer kids out there who, as we've said several times throughout this episode, have just been barraged with executive orders and hate speech intensely for the last week and a half or so. Tell them what SOGIECon has to offer.
Right. That what we're going to do at SOGIECon is we're going to create a world that everybody wants to live in, right? And we're going to do that together. It's not just something that we do, it's something that we all do together by creating a space where every human in that space is welcomed, valued, and affirmed. And that you will come into that space knowing that you belong. You'll leave the space believing that you belong. And we can't wait to see you. And between now and then, just remember that you are loved and valuable and that you matter and that the world needs you. We need you.
Next up on Transqat, a conversation with film director Logan Ward. You can access his documentary, Remarkable, through transqat.com. It's on the new menu on the front page. I recommend watching this before listening to the next episode. The film is only about 30 minutes long, and it's well worth your time. It features such luminaries as P. Carl and Julia Serrano, so consider this your homework assignment. A reminder to join me at Prism Counseling's book club event on Wednesday, February 26th, 6:30 to 8 at the East Haven Public Library. We're discussing Sam Lansky's novel Broken People, and this is an event designed specifically for the queer community. I'm pretty sure there are other housekeeping items I'm supposed to mention, but frankly, I'm exhausted. I'm away for a nap. This has been Transqat. I'm Clare McCarthy. Thank you for listening. Let's talk soon.
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece.
And you've just been listening to Transqat. It is made by one of my favorite people in the world, Clare McCarthy.
Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC.
Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
Join us on the web at transqat.com.
That's TRANSQAT.com.
QAT.com.
QAT.com.
There you'll find links to Transqat, the blog,
writing projects,
speaking engagements,
and our PayPal donations page.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monkeys.
Your monies.
Your monies.
Not monkeys.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monies. Any monkeys will be gratefully received as well.
Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
On TikTok, we are at The Real Transqat.
Want to tell your story on air?
Or ask Claire a question?
What is the deal?
She has all the answers.
Or suggest a guest or topic for an upcoming episode.
Use the contact page at the website
or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com.
crmtranscat@gmail.com.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.